we need to talk about fantasy football. Things are getting out of control, which is perfect for fantasy, but not so good for foots or balls, honestly.
Well, I am Ninja, he's Ninja, she is Ninja too. I am Ninja, we are Ninja, but I believe that you are Ninja too.
For those of you who don't know, fantasy football is like teaching middle schoolers how to cook an omelet while hang gliding. You're not actually in control at all of anything. Do I know everything about football? Seems like a ridiculous waste of time, but I do know a lot about fantasy and a fair bit about drafts. The winds of change, the gusts of chaos, the breeze of acquaintanceships. Let's get to this fantasy draft. Always do a snake draft and always draft real snakes. I mean, it just gets everything done quicker. Be sure to mail snakes to the people that can't be there. You know that thing that your wife made and tell Jim, don't touch the thing on the shelf. And then, it's Jim, so he's going to touch it. But put one of the snakes that likes to nest in bad pottery, like a coral snake. Don't tell them, but they kind of look like bad pottery. On the couch, I always put an anaconda or two replacing some pillows. That way, if you don't get up and make your pick, you're going to get squozed. The best creatures to have in your fantasy football league, trolls. They choose all players based on the quantity of meat they would provide if they ate them. I mean, I once played with a troll who chose a defensive tackle as his quarterback. Desmond Watson threw for, what are you talking about, yards that season. Unicorns are kind of fun to have in your league. Most mascots are natural predators of unicorns, so they're not going to pick any of them. Buccaneers, they've killed more unicorns than you can unicount. The unicorns end up just picking players from the Packers or the Browns, or as they are sometimes derogatorily referred to, the Packers and the Browns. I do always like to have a couple experimental chefs in my fantasy league. First off, you get a season full of surprising takes on classic snacks, but also they draft like they cook, so the better the chef, the worse the drafter. Lots of unlikely pairings. I picked Bijan Johnson as my first running back pick. I'm going to slightly shave off all of his stats, so his TDs, his rushing yards. I don't need that stuff. I basically just want the shifty eyes and the hip. I'm going to take those and reduce those in a white wine sauce with my second running back pick, a stick of mustard butter. Dream fairies are fun to have in your fantasy league because they really lean into the fantasy. We had a DF in our league last year that was convinced that a giggle rainbow made of friendship hugs was going to win the Super Bowl MVP. That thing didn't even make the playoffs. Your brother-in-law, you invited him and, you didn't marry him. And he's not going to want to make it weird by, being too competitive or anything like that. He'll basically fall for any stupid trade you give him. You want to give me Xavier Legette and you want me to give you Jamar Chase? Okay. I mean, let me just make sure that the first guy is actually a player in the NFL. Or at least somebody who has, good seats. This is your last chance to get some of our fun summer Aloha gear. You thought I was going to threaten you, didn't you? I am. September 1st, all of that gear goes away. You'll never see it again. But don't worry. We're sending it to a beach in Alaska. Gonna live a wonderful life with a bunch of other limited edition apparel. And, you just won't be able to interact with it in any way whatsoever ever again. If you want any of that sweet Ninja Aloha gear, just get it before September 1st. What happened to fantasy league kickers? Most leagues don't even draft kickers anymore. How dare you? Kicking is like 25 or 30% of what I do. I started my own fantasy league just for kickers. It's called Kiki Feet, for people that enjoy all of the tremendous feats done by kickers. 17 million people joined at the very first day. That just goes to prove that lots of people are still into remarkable foot-related action. The worst people to play fantasy football with. People who have played between 1 and 3 seasons of football at any level at any point in their life. For me, it's tough to pick that QB because a lot of people said I had the stuff. I was the all-time quarterback, in my neighborhood. I just had a good arm. A lot of people said I could have been one. The injury stopped me in my tracks. Lost my 2 front teeth the natural way, but, mid-season, and so I couldn't call plays. That was a tough 4 weeks. It really derailed what was probably headed towards a Hall of Fame football career. Dudes who just got their first apartment. Definitely don't go to that apartment. I mean, that's a tub of loneliness and aggro fantasies. No moms or dads in any of my fantasy leagues because they're lampreys of time. They will do anything at all to avoid spending time with their families. I do not have any lampreys in my fantasy league either because they suck. No mind flayers in my league because they're going to use their mind control to manipulate the game. Cast your brain files back to last season when the Commanders blew the game. That was a mind flayer. You remember the fourth quarter when they all pulled out little blankies and took a nap on the field while the Cowboys scored 4 or 5 times? A real cat from outer space moment. That was not of this realm. That was a mind flayer. One of the most important things in fantasy football is the flex. Spell a flex and the flex tones. For my flex, I always choose the water person. And, I stream them. It's always a different person squirting different stuff into different players' mouths. They're not going to be thinking about their assignments. They got a mouthful of cherry-flavored cod liver oil aid. For your super flex, you've got to go big. I suggest using Titans. Not the team, actual Titans. Chronos is good. Prometheus, always a solid choice. I like going with Nemesine, the Titan of memory. Your opponent's not going to be able to stop your plays if they forget how to stand. That's a super flex. Good luck on your drafts. I look forward to footing your balls soon. The Cyclone of College Regret, is a good friend of mine. It should not be confused with the Cologne of College Regret, which I think anyone who's gone to college understands the regret of colognes. You got the ooh and the toilette really close together. Red, cup, solo, bed, twin. Empty. College regret. It smells like the night you wish you could forget.